Coffee pot conversations.
Bonjour et bienvenue to Coffee Pot Conversations, a podcast about Paris that started, and we'll just leave it at that. So, what's going on in the world these days? That comes up in the news, but one thing that I do want to cover, which I have missed. I was talking to Nev and the boys about this, and now Emmanuel Macron has jumped on the bandwagon, along with Australia, about the social media ban for the under-16s. He wants to push it, so it's not going to be having mobile phones in schools from September. I have concerns about this. If you take something away, you have to replace it. And all you're doing is you're kicking the can down the road. You're going to implement these bans. All right, no smartphones in schools, I sort of understand, but then kids are using phones for homework. Teachers are setting homework on their phones. They're using QR code. I've covered this in the previous episode. But I understand the social media aspect, but it's also social networking and social integration. And people they're doom scrolling. Yes, they are, but that's where it needs guidance. That's where they need to be educated. Not just the kids, but the parents. Parents are too busy. They're trying to cook dinner, they're trying to sort the house out, they're trying to make sure the kids are ready for school the next day. They can't always be there watching the kids. Now, the kid's going to sit there and scroll, and yeah, we've all done it. I have. I restrict it. I'm not saying I'm great. There are nights myself and Nev will just send reels to each other. You know, I'm an Instagram man. I'll just flick, and that's what will happen. But for me, it's within constraints. I don't do it every night. Don't do it every week. It'll just be once every couple of weeks. We don't live together, so it's a way of having a conversation. But non-verbal communication, which is very important. Now, if you look at one of the arguments that they're saying, it's because of what's being shown, the content, and it's creating anxiety in the youth. I remember a few years back, when I was growing up, 5-10 years ago, there's a big hoo-ha about body shaming women. And still, magazines continue to portray these super toned, super lithe women in their magazines. They also show the rich and famous in their magnificent mansions. From the day dot, I remember flicking open a Hello magazine, seeing Elizabeth Hurley. I was going to say John Taylor from Duran Duran, but Jasmine Le Bon. And you see all these people and you go, wow, what a great life, what a way to live. You look at Tower, you look at Made in Chelsea, Geordie Shore, it's Love Island, it's there everywhere you look. That's not social media, but it's there. We're almost made to feel lesser because we're not living up to these imaginary lifestyles. Now, if you take away that dream, not only the dream, but I'm not going to say the inspiration, but what are you taking away? You're taking away an ideology. Differentiate between real and not real. And I'm not just talking about AI, but now AI, they can create pictures, videos. I've even picked up yesterday a website that does music. I composed a little song yesterday using AI. It's pretty good. I need to do more work on it, but it's not too bad. But you're taking away that little bit of creativity, a little bit of, it is doom scrolling. Monitor it, keep it short and sweet. But what are the kids going to do? They can't go to youth clubs. There are none. They're too young to go to the pub, even though they're too expensive and less. So what they're going to start playing sport? That's great. But now the parents need to find the money for that. And they're going to go to the libraries, which are closing down, and you can't talk. So where's that social activity coming from? Where are they going to do this active learning? Nev, she uses Emily English. I'm not ashamed to say, some of that stuff's good. So much so that I bought the cookbook for Nev. First one, not the second one, I haven't done that yet. But that was on TikTok. Now, I know Nev's over 16. Yes, she's over 16. But Rory picks up information about sport on these social media sites. Jasper learns about different countries. He asked me the other day what's going on in Iran. Or was that Rory? Either way, one of them's doing it and they're asking because they're finding out the news, because they're looking at decent content. The content I don't like at the minute, and I've never liked the regurgitated Parisian stuff, but look, it's a proper coffee pot conversation. Luckily, I've just checked and I have press record. The stuff I don't like is one of the latest trends is you'll see a clip and it'll be in the top 7/8 of the screen. Underneath is a picture of someone reacting. That's all it is. That's all it is. It's just a non-verbal reaction. There's nothing going on their face. I saw one with the Salvador Dali mask, from Casa de Papel, Money Heist. What's the point? You're just using someone else's content, someone's material, you're putting on for I don't know what. Why do I use Instagram? I do it to inform people I've got another episode coming up, or just random photos of Paris. And the reason that came back is because I had a blog. I didn't just talk about my life. Who cares? No one cares about my life. No one cares about my university degrees. No one cares that I'm doing a podcast. No one cares that it was my birthday the other day. My family care. And I think that's where I'm going to leave this conversation, because, my family do care. So, my birthday, 3 grey hairs and acid reflux. I've hit the big 5-0. Spent time with the boys, I spent time with Nev. A little bit of a highlight of which is later on in this episode. I did my 10-year anniversary thing with the boys and included Nev this time. She wasn't there last time because we weren't together. And that was 10 years ago. Flicking back over old photos, it's lovely to see how the boys have developed, how they've grown. They've taken on rugby. 10 years ago. I think I was just beginning my university career again, the second stretch. Hadn't even contemplated running. Now I've done 3 marathons, probably about half a dozen halves. Got the blog. I've got a bachelor's and a master's degree, but I've got the blog, I've got the Instagram, I've got the podcast, which has gone from audio into visual. The blog, by the way, an Englishmaninparis.blog. I do really need to update that. Instagram, an Englishman in Paris blog is my handle. And, you know about the podcast because you're watching it on Spotify or YouTube, or you're listening to it across many different podcast platforms. Anyway, thank you for sticking with me. I've got no idea what this music's doing in terms of whether it's going to get blocked because of copyright infringement. My regular shop has changed hands and I was there too early because the transport systems have changed, so the train's earlier. It's just everything, and it's the day before recording, or day before release, sorry, so that's why this is, the news has been highlighted because I read about it this morning, being Monday morning. It's out on a Tuesday, so it's every second and fourth Tuesday. Anyway, it's a long-winded introduction. That's nearly 10 minutes worth of introduction. So I've checked my monitor and I can see that we are now going, Emmanuel Macron, with the news. Emmanuel, Président, Monsieur Président, is that you? No, Paul, it's still me. And unlike President Macron, Donald Trump doesn't speak to me because he knows of my dominance on the world stage. Anyway, swapping back to glasses just so I can read the news. I hadn't mentioned this previously as I'd simply forgotten to integrate it into last episode's news report. But Paris has recently introduced an interesting addition to its public transport options, quietly expanding the city's network in a new and innovative way. In the southeastern suburbs, a cable car system known as Cable C1 or Cable C1 began operating in mid-December. This new aerial connection links the towns of Créteil and Villeneuve-Saint-Georges, covering the route in just 18 minutes. Previously, this journey was made by bus, often a slow and crowded experience. Now, passengers can glide above the roads, rooftops and housing estates, enjoying a fresh perspective on their daily commute. The cable C1 is fully electric and runs almost without interruption, with cabins arriving every 20 to 30 seconds during busy periods. It integrates directly with Metro Line 8, allowing seamless transfers for commuters. The system is designed to handle around 11,000 passengers daily and has rapidly become a familiar part of local life. Besides regular commuters, the cable car is attracting others who are simply curious, eager to take in the views from above. During January, the system faced some challenges when storms brought strong winds, forcing brief suspensions to ensure safety. Thankfully, replacement buses were swiftly deployed to maintain service, minimising disruption. This new form of transportation represents an unusual step forward for Paris, which often focuses on underground expansion. Here, progress is visible above the city streets. Shifting focus to recent political events at the World Economic Forum held in Davos in January, French President Emmanuel Macron made headlines not only for his remarks on trade in geopolitics, but also for his choice of aerial. Macron appeared indoors wearing mirrored aviator sunglasses, which quickly caught the attention of social media users and sparked a wave of jokes and memes. Comparisons to action movie characters were common, taking the spotlight momentarily away from the serious topics being discussed. The sunglasses were revealed to be worn for medical reasons. A burst blood vessel in Macron's eye required protection. Rather than avoiding the moment, Macron embraced it with humour, making light of the situation by speaking about resilience and determination. Even former US President Donald Trump reportedly complimented the sunglasses, while the incident was brief. It highlighted an important aspect in modern politics, the power of symbolism. Often, images and public impressions spread faster than policies themselves. While the spectacle didn't linger long in Paris, it offered a reminder globally that in the political arena, image and message can collide unexpectedly. January also brought unusually cold weather to the French capital, with temperatures near freezing intensified by Storm Goretti. Despite the chill, Parisians chose to respond in a typically cultural fashion. From the 21st to the 25th of January, the city hosted the 10th edition of Nuit de la Lecture, or Reading Nights. During the event, libraries, museums and other cultural venues stayed open late into the night, offering a variety of literary activities. These included readings by candlelight, performances dedicated to literature, and even silent discos set amongst the bookshelves. Locations ranged from the Maison de Balzac, home of the famous writer, to museums focused on fashion and other art forms. And now, over to Paul and Opé Tranquille, without his sunglasses, for the second half of the monological episode about Paris and her villages.
Coffee pot conversations.
Chiron was very working class, had a solidarity feel about it. It's full of craftspeople, artisans, local commerce and small businesses. It's still got a strong community, a friendly artistic flair. It's very diverse, and apparently the community is very vibrant. That's the 20th, and this is the south of the 20th, where Belleville was at the top. Chiron is down at the bottom. Coming back to Bercy, they really smash it up quite a lot. It was a rural village, viticulture, small cottages and farms, vineyards. And historically, it's intertwined with the cultivation of the vines in the region. It was actually quite heavily prominent within the Parisian area for the wine industry. It now has a Parc de Bercy and a Bercy Village shopping centre, which I have been to on my day trip to Paris. Back in the 12th century, the Bercy site began its transformation from a semi-rural area to a lordship, becoming a strategically important territory. A few centuries later, in the 17th century, the neighbourhood gained new prestige with the construction of the Château de Bercy, a residence said to rival the splendour of Versailles. Can you imagine? It naturally attracted the upper aristocracy. But it's truly in the 17th century that Bercy's destiny changed, when Louis XIV granted tax exemptions to winemakers. This decision led to the creation of Bercy's first wine warehouse, an act that would leave a lasting legacy. But in the year 2000, the site was fully renovated to become Bercy Village. Built on a foundation to the old wine warehouses, classified as historic monuments in 1986, the original architecture was preserved to retain the soul of the place, while transforming it into a modern living space, blending shopping, dining and leisure in a truly unique setting. Today, Bercy Village is known as a lively destination for the restaurants, shops, leisure spaces and the UGC Ciné-Cité Cinema Complex, with easy access via Metro Line 14, Cours Saint-Emilion station. It's become a popular spot for both Parisians and visitors. So, moving around, we're going to hit back to the 13th, and in the 13th arrondissement was Gobelin, which was full of the royal tapestry and carpet manufacturers, skilled artisans and vibrant arts and crafts. And we still have the Musée de Gobelin, which is nice. I've not been in there. I walked past it as I went to, in fact, two boulangeries during my stay for the first marathon. Needed somewhere to go. They were sort of close by. Actually, little anecdote, I tagged one of them in my Instagram stories and named the wrong one. So I then went back, had a bit of a conversation, also Instagram. It was nice, it was lovely, it was polite. So apologies to both for the little mix-up. But back in the 13th arrondissement, and Louis XIV tried to set up tax-free havens for the manufacture of all the goods. So when he was doing all his bits at Versailles, he'd worked it through. And since then, obviously, they've stayed in there. The industry has declined quite a bit, but yeah, so the Musée de Gobelin is still around. Go pay it a visit. Let me know what it's like if you wish to. 14th is also swallowed up into Paris. And 14th is my favourite. I'm not going to go on too much about it. But the main part of 14th is the catacombs, I would say. Montparnasse is, I always thought the 14th. Turns out the Tour Montparnasse is in the 15th. Not my favourite place, and a lot of people feel the same. I thought it was going to be something better, but I guess COVID hit and shopping declined, and that's one of those things. However, while we're talking about the 15th, Grenelle, as well as Vaugirard, also swallowed up. And we're making our way across the Parc André Citroën. Again, not been there. So what do we know about Grenelle and Vaugirard? Well, Grenelle was very much a spa resort with market gardens, focused very much on relaxation and leisure. With a laid-back and picturesque ambience. You can add vineyards as well, if you like. Looks a bit of a theme, this vineyard in Paris thing. It's amazing, but it was, yeah. Vaugirard, very down to earth. They're now, especially 15th. It's very much sort of a built residential area. Obviously, little pockets aren't quite that way, but it's not, not how it used to be. But hey. So, pros and cons with everything, with developments and improvements, as it were. So we're moving on to the 16th, and we have Passy, which was, as we know, the mayor of Passy deciding it was going to come up with a great plan of the Escargot numbering system. So what do we know about Passy? Not one I've been to, although I do believe I ran through it for the Paris Marathon. But Passy, very upscale and impressive mansions, wealthy residents and very intellectual and cultural elite. It was a refined atmosphere, and artists and writers as well as the upper class resided here. Resided here. Yeah, anyway, you can see some expensive houses that, likewise, when you run out of Bois de Vincennes, or run into it, there's some nice houses around there as well. The extremes of Paris, the extremities of Paris, have these nice places as well as the extremes. You can see, if you look at the 10th compared to the 16th, total difference. But that's like with every major city, every capital. It's the way of the world. So, Passy is now very historically elegant, full of refinement and also cultural institutions and museums. Yeah, it's nice. It's not what I would call typical Paris, but if you want a little bit of a break from the main parts, pop over to the 16th, have a little look. You won't be upset, although you might be, depends what you're after. But that also then connects to the Bois de Boulogne, and within there we have the Fondation Louis Vuitton, and we also have the Parc Bagatelle. We also have the Chateau de Bagatelle in the Bois de Boulogne, and Richard Wallace of Wallace Fountains. He actually lived out his final years at the Chateau de Bagatelle, dying there on the 20th of July in 1890. He's buried at Père Lachaise, and I've mentioned that in episode, I think it was 2.1 of the Wallace Fountains. It was just a huge monument to this chap that, I don't know if monument is the right word, but yeah, you need to listen to the Wallace Foundation, the Wallace Fountain episode with Barbara of the Wallace Foundation. It's actually split into two episodes, 2.1 and 2.2. There's so much more that you can learn about this man. Not just the fountains, but the man and his collection as well. He's got the Wallace collection over in London, which my nan absolutely loved. I went there a few times with a favourite piece, the Laughing Cavalier. Nothing to do with him, but obviously he's an art collector. I've also been with in-laws in more recent times. So yeah, anyway, moving on. Moving back to the French villages that are turned into Paris. Yes, we all know Paris has expanded and it's swallowed up, all to do with horsemen. And it's now sort of stuck with the Périphérique. What I don't know, and I know no one's going to answer me because no one really listens, no one gets in touch, and that's a shame, but I'm leaving it open. So the suburbs outside of the Périphérique, are they still classed as Paris? Where does Paris draw its line? I don't know. Is anybody out there going to answer me? That would be good. Email me, coffeepot@anenglishmaninparis.blog, or the episode number. And that works for all the episodes. If you're listening to, I don't know, episode 1.5, Rory's debut, then just do 1.5 @anenglishmaninparis.blog. That's how it works. If this is, for instance, I don't know, this is episode 5.1, then you can email 5.1 @anenglishmaninparis.blog, and it all works. It's absolutely marvellous. I set that up during the interim between season 1 and season 2. I amazed myself what I could do. But there we go. So anyway, that I think will be it for this little episode. I'm actually just going to reel off a list of 10 villages because I was going to go over, but I haven't because, well, I've not actually been to them all. And there are a lot of villages. What I will tell you, actually, before I do go, is each arrondissement is split into administrative sections, quarters. So as for instance, the first arrondissement, we have Saint-Germain-le-Roi, Les Halles-Parler-Royal, and the Place Vendôme. So these are the administrative quarters, the first, second, third and fourth within the first arrondissement. Then we have the second arrondissement, which has the quartiers 5 to 8. The third has 9 to 12, and so on and so forth, whereby at the end of it we actually have 80 sections in total. So we have Paris, we have 20 arrondissements, each arrondissement split into quartier, 4 of each. So looking at the 20s, we have Belleville, Saint-Fargeau, Père-Lachaise and Charonne. And all of those are absorbed. It is interesting to see, I promise. I suppose that's when I was walking around originally looking at different sections going, well, that's different to this one. I remember, I still remember doing it. I still get that feeling even now when I'm walking through an arrondissement. You turn a corner in a totally different environment. So much so, in fact, that each quartier has its own little feel about it. So within those quarters, you can have different communities. It's beautiful. So that's pretty much it. So, I know. Let me quickly run down the list of villages that I was going to talk about after my sip of coffee. Café Gemma. You ready? No particular order that I'm aware of. Montmartre, Belleville, Mélenchon, La Villette, Hauteril. Actually, I'm going to go back over La Villette, Renel, Passy, La Chapelle, Rogerade, and Charonne. Sorry, thought it was coming to an end, didn't you? La Villette up at the 19th, top right of Paris. I went there for the half marathon. I went with Nev and the boy to collect my running t-shirt and my bib number for the half marathon. I was actually there today before recording this episode. Originally, back in March 2023, and it didn't feel right to me, it didn't feel like Paris. It still, but no, it does a lot more now. But I knew it was an outside extremity of the new Paris in the 19th. Then you turn the corner, as I've said, you turn corners in Paris all the time, it's about a totally different feel, and this really did hit. This was the science part in the different venues. Back in 2023, I had to go to the Petit Halles, but you do have Parc de Villette, and it's got things like Cité de Sciences, Philharmonie de Paris. It's just full of all bits of modern engineering, which is amazing to look at. And the hall we went into, it was just like a big exhibition hall. And we have them here, and that's fine. They have the smaller one, the bigger one, the music venues. Then as we left, that's when we went into one of the McDonald's, one of the 3 that we've been into, which Jasper mentioned again in 1.9. So yeah, we had the Royal de la Villette and Le Petit Halles de la Villette. We walked past like a giant dragon thing, and that was pretty cool. I again saw that today. It's a huge slide coming out of the mouth. Yeah, I'd like to spend more time over there and have a proper look around to see what's going on. Obviously get caught up with different things. Today I was just walking along the Canal Saint-Martin. Yeah, another episode, although that one won't take long, I promise you. Anyway, you don't always get the chance to do what you want to do. And if I can take us away from the 19th for a moment, taking a jog all the way over to the other side of Paris, down to the bottom left, back to the 16th in Vaugirard. And we went to the Point de Versailles Expo to collect my marathon tops. Both times I did a marathon, 2022 and 2023. the first time we stayed in the 13th. We got across in the tram, that was quite nice. The second time we got there quite early. We went to Rue de Vaugirard. I stayed outside of Dupont de Versailles, a little cafe. We just watched the world go by. I believe we mentioned that in one of the episodes, as well as I believe we mentioned that in episode 1.1 on eating in Paris with Nev. If it wasn't that, then it would have been when Nev co-hosted with me on episode 1.8 avec Claudine. I'm sure it was the first episode, my debut episode upon launch. Seems such a long time away. Long time ago. Seems a long time back. Anyway, that's really bad grammatics, and for that I paid £10,000 for my creative writing masters. However, Vaugirard down in the 16th, again full of market gardens and vineyards, very rural and down to earth. Now it's quite residential with modern buildings and parks, it's very green spaces, it's a nice mix of city space and relaxation. Bear with. Moving from Port de Versailles to Port d'Orléans on the 14th, which another village absorbed in 1816. The 14th arrondissement, yes, still my favourite. So I stayed with Nev when we did the 10k back in 2023, and we stayed just next to Parc Montsouris, which is a separate episode mentioning the parks of Paris. That's later on in the season. I may also do a separate episode of the runs of Paris. Not having the runs in Paris, but the running of the runs in Paris. Running in Paris, you know what I mean? Anyway. So Port de Lyon is stationed on line 4 of the Paris Metro, as well as being stopped on tramway line 3A. Do I mean Port de Lyon? Port de Orléans. Anyway, it's in the 14th arrondissement, but in the quartier of Petit Montrouge, which, as I said before, you've got the main arrondissement. It's all split up in the quartier, so quarters. Which, as I said before, you've got the main arrondissement. It's all split up in the quarters. Quartier, Petit Montrouge. Now the funny thing is, the extension line. Opening up in 2013, Marais de Montrouge is actually the first new station of Line 4 in almost 100 years, and it stops in Montrouge, which is a place that I used to visit on the other side of the Périphérique, where La Vache Noire. It's a lovely little area. I had to walk around there just on the last day. I found a stay for the 10k back in, I believe that was in June, so Port d'Orléans. The trains from Orléans used to stop here. It's connected to Gare d'Orsay, which is now Musée d'Orsay. I'm not going to go into that on this occasion, but it's quite fascinating looking into how the railways used to work. Alright, just quickly going over to Gare d'Orsay. It was the first electrified urban terminal station in the world. Opened 28th of May 1900 in time for the 1900 Exposition Universelle. So again, just going over expos as well as Paris being quite an achieving city. A lot took place in Paris, and with the French as well, which we don't really always know about or give credit for. And I'm getting more and more impressed with the French the more I learn about them, which we will learn about in the future episodes, generally like this monologue episode. So just to finish, Gare d'Orsay turns into Musée d'Orsay, which I've not been to. I've walked past it, but it's the station, the Gare d'Orléans. It was the original one, turned into Gare d'Austerlitz, which we're going to mention Austerlitz in a future Napoleonic episode. How about that? I've got a lot to cover. At least you know what's coming up later on. Not this season though. So I'm just going to leave that there, because this episode has had very little direction. I knew what I wanted to say, didn't really get around to saying it, and the stuff that I did say, it wasn't well said. However, this has been a great little episode, just covering the fact that Paris has expanded. It's absorbed villages into its main state, which are now, 150, 160 years later on, all part of main state Paris. So next time in the outer arrondissements, just remember they weren't always a part of Paris.
Coffee Pot Conversations.
And thank you for watching episode 5.2, Paris and Her Villages, part 2. Now, I know everyone knows about the 20 arrondissements and l'Escargot, but I don't know who knew about the Baron Osman project, where I was going to say they condensed Paris, but they didn't actually extend Paris, bringing the villages in, which, this was part 2 of, very, very rushed, and it was the first one that I'd recorded externally, sitting in a bistro, au Père Tranquille, which I mentioned is where I sat, and it's one of the first places I really wanted to visit in Paris. not one of the Eiffel Towers, not one of your fancy schmancy monuments, the museums, the galleries, not like that, just somewhere decent to sit and eat, which I enjoyed. I want to say thank you to Frankie, Frankie Fended Show, because she made an amazing birthday cake. She is a super talented baker, very modest and shy, so I won't harp on about that, but there is a photo of it on my Instagram account. Check that one out. I just had someone sit down next to me, and I'm thinking like, really, oh no, I've got an Instagram and then a podcast, but it is what it is. This is the second take of the conclusion, because the first one I carried on my little soapbox rant, my little coffee pot conversation about social media and social networking, saying about WhatsApp and texts. If you move off of WhatsApp, if that's deemed as social media, then you're going to be texting, MMSing. Do you remember those? MMS. And also YouTube Shorts. I don't know where this band's going to stand, but there are ways and means around it. I'm not going to say VPNs, but possibly VPN. Just faking your age because they want, photos, so you just hold up someone else's photo and that's you. Ways and means. If you're going to take away, replace something. So that's about it. I'm going to mention Jasper's birthday as well, which is coming up. I've actually remembered to mention that one, so that's a winner. I'll probably mention it next episode as well. And talking of Jasper, which was really bad cue. Jasper. No, I keep doing that, but it isn't a red Jasper. Well, it is, but it's time for Jasper's jingle.
Coming up on Coffee Pot Conversations.
We have episode 5.3. I haven't decided which one it is. I may change the location, or I may keep it and do the op-ed tranquil ones in one hit. Maybe release them in the order that I recorded them. Not necessarily wrote them though, but recorded them. We will also find somewhere a little less noisy, and hopefully in a less rushed fashion. But every second Tuesday, every second Thursday of the month, January to May, July to November. That's about it. So, Rory, it's over to you.
Coffee Pot Conversations.